Hey everyone, I'm Kunal Bajwa.
And I'm Lance Jordan.
We are two nerds who decided to start a podcast in 2020 due to the pandemic. No topic is necessarily off the table, and we'd like you to join us in hearing our thoughts on various topics, ranging from anime to Zeppelins. We have it all. Here we go.
Well, we're a new year. It's the first episode of They Need a Hobby podcast, season 2. Last year was such a, shit show, but 2021 will be a better year. This will be our year. Kunal already has some great things lined up that he can't talk about.
That's right. Secrets. I'm a spy.
That's right. But we also have a guest in our building, a good friend of Kunal. Apparently, Kunal used to be the landlord for our guest today.
So I was a landlord, but I was part of the landlord company that
his company.
That's how I got to know him. Basically, my brother was actually this guest landlord, and he was right across the hall. And of course, typical Kunal story. I'm wearing an anime t-shirt, and he's like, "Oh, you like One Punch Man?" And I'm like, "Yes, I like One Punch Man."
Was it the same One Punch Man shirt?
Actually, it was. That's the fun part about this story, is it literally was the same one. And we actually found out that we had old family friends that we knew mutually. And I was like, "Oh, well, this is nuts." So I was like, "Great." So we became fast friends from there. I'd like to introduce Aditya Nalor, the med student. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's a pleasure to be here. Just a little bit about me. I'm a third-year medical student at St. Louis University. And I'm planning on going to dermatology after I graduate.
Nice. And fun fact, we both became friends with Kunal through One Punch Man.
It's great.
And Full Circle Moment, the first episode of last season.
It really is a full circle moment.
We talked about that shirt and One Punch Man.
Oh,
I
wow.
mean, he's our Lord and Savior. So
oh, yeah.
That's right.
Saitama.
Saitama's our Lord and Savior.
Lord and Savior. Can't do no wrong.
That's right.
Until he does wrong and probably destroy a whole city.
Yeah, but they need him. They really do need him. Like, all the monsters would destroy the city even more if he didn't do anything.
You don't think Genos got it handled?
No.
No?
I think Genos needs to... I don't know what Genos should do. Honestly, I really don't, because that guy is just trying so hard, and he's just out of his league every time, which is sad because One Punch Man can't be a S-class hero, but that's neither here nor there.
We start off light. So are you a fan of anime at all?
I'm not like a huge anime fan. I grew up watching Dragon Ball Z.
Okay.
So I love the
Typical.
whole like Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Super, everything.
You kind of tune down the broadcast a little bit?
Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
I watched like Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood,
Ooh.
Fate Stay Night, Fate Zero, stuff like that. But I definitely am not as much of an anime fan as Kunal.
Yeah.
Which is saying something, because it's all perspective. Because I have friends that make me look like I don't know, they make me look like a square when it comes to anime. Like, I call them my anime dealers, and they're like, "Oh, you should check out the Seven Deadly Sins," or you should check out this anime like Cyber City Oedo. And I'm like, yes. And then I meet other people, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, you're so nerdy." And I'm like, "Dude, I'm at like a mid-class range. You have no idea." Like, I've been to conventions, and I'm like, people need to use deodorant. It's sad out here.
Yeah, like I've talked to Kunal many times in our relationship about how he's probably like the nerdiest person I know in my life.
I didn't know that, actually.
Yeah, no, I mentioned that before.
In your entire life, though? Like,
yeah,
the entire life.
Well, I take that as an honor. I'll take that.
No, it's good. It's good. So just the fact that you have all these friends who are like many levels above.
Yeah.
S-class nerds out there.
Full circle.
S-class weebs.
If you don't know what a weeb is, look it up.
Yeah. Kunal's like the Goku, but then like every season he finds someone stronger that he has to challenge.
Right.
For the
angels,
anime knowledge.
like these,
yeah.
like the S-class are like the angels, apparently. So
who's the Zeno?
Yeah.
The Zeno is probably a dude. It's between 3 people, honestly.
Okay.
Patrick, Blake, or Sasha.
Where's
one of those
Brawly
people.
at?
Brawly is... Ooh, that's a good question.
I love how we're like power scaling like Kunal's nerdy friends. Like this.
I mean, Brawly, I'll have to come back for you for the second episode.
Okay.
I'll tell you about that later.
Another time.
We've lost like half the audience at this point.
Well, there's still more to talk about. Video games.
That's right.
So, what is everybody playing?
I beat Ghost of Tsushima, and now I'm playing Legends right now. I also just bought the new Yakuza game, so I'm totally gonna dive into that eventually.
Of course you did.
Nice.
Hey man, leave me alone. All right. I wasn't gonna play initially because it was turn-based, but I saw so many good reviews I couldn't pass it up.
Yeah.
So I got a good deal on it too. So yeah.
What about you, sir?
I got the new Xbox Series X in November.
Okay.
Boy.
How many kids did you have to knock over?
No, it was a funny story. My an old friend from college, who still lives up in Rochester, New York.
Oh, cool.
He had pre-ordered the PS5 and Xbox Series X. He was only gonna keep the PS5, but like he wanted to get both just in case, like the pre-orders locked down. I couldn't get a single pre-order, and then when the PS5 dropped, I stayed up till like 5 a.m.
Oh my god.
The day it came out. Just refreshing every single page. I got my payment info in there like 5 times, and it still didn't work. Okay. So I messaged him, and I'm like, hey dude, I know you have your PS5. Do you still have like your Series X pre-order? He's like, yeah, I forgot to cancel it. So like it's ready to be picked up. And I'm like, can I buy it from you? Mm-hmm. He's like, yeah, sure. I'll ship it over to you. So, I got very lucky in that I had a friend who had that lying around. He wasn't going to use it. Forgot to cancel it. So I was able to get a hold of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it was good. So I got that. So I've been playing that mostly. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which is super fun.
Game. I've heard the lore for that's amazing.
Yeah. They really tie in a lot of stuff from the older games into the lore, which I love. So they're really bringing it back to kind of what really got me interested in the series in the first place.
Indeed.
So I did that, and then now I'm playing the other new Ubisoft game. It's called Immortals Phoenix Rising.
Yeah.
It was originally titled Gods and Monsters.
Yeah.
If you guys remember.
I think I heard about it.
Yeah.
Is it Chinese myth?
No, it's Greek mythology.
But
they have a DLC coming out that's going to be Chinese mythology, which is super cool. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so I've been playing that, and that's super fun as well.
They released it on the Switch too.
Yeah, it's on the Switch. It's
which is wild. That's awesome.
So it's very similar to Breath of the Wild. Like it's superficially, I'm not saying graphically, I'm just saying like gameplay elements wise, it's almost like a carbon copy of Breath of the Wild. But then when you get deeper into it, you can see all of these differences.
Okay.
So they take what made Breath of the Wild so successful and kind of add things to it and maybe put their own spin on it, which I like.
Cool. Okay. Well, I'd love to talk more about games with you, but let's get to the meat of the stuff. So what's it like being a med student, man? Like, can you walk us through that process?
Yeah, it's interesting for sure. I like it. I guess if I say I like med school, that's kind of a disingenuous thing to say. Like, I don't think anyone likes med school.
Is it fulfilling?
No, not really. Like, listen, like, is it fulfilling in the sense that I'm on the path to kind of achieving the career that I want?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's more what I was trying to say.
Yeah, for sure. But is it fulfilling like day to day? God, no. Like, I don't think I've felt more unfulfilled than I ever in my life than I have this year. Like, it's just been like crazy. But
what you mean.
So you do 4 years of undergrad in the U.S. before you go to med school, and then med school is 4 years. So the first 2 years are preclinical, is what they called it, where you basically learn about all the diseases and the physiology and kind of understand how everything works. And then the last 2 years, so I'm halfway through my third year now, so I'm starting in that process, is clinical rotations.
Which is ridiculous, because I thought you just started med school.
Right, time flew. But the clinical rotations is where you basically go to different services, different specialties, and spend like 7 or 8 weeks and kind of, see how it is. And then you take a big test at the end of it. And at the end of each rotation, it kind of tests, what you learned basically. That's in that rotation. So right now I'm on my surgery rotation. So, yeah, it's an interesting time. Med school is not easy. It's not something that I would recommend anyone go into unless they genuinely care about medicine, and if that's what they're passionate about, great.
And you're like going through med school at a very interesting time with the whole COVID-19 out there lurking about.
Yeah, it's been really interesting, especially this year because I'm in my third year, like I mentioned, and that's when we do the clinical rotation. So you're basically in the hospital working with patients, learning how to be a doctor clinically, or, hopefully learning those things. And it's not been fun, just with the pandemic, because, we're not getting paid to do this. Like, we're paying a lot of money to kind of go in there.
You gotta love U.S. education for that.
I know.
Yeah.
So at times it's almost like, oh man, I'm going in here like as a COVID sponge, basically, like, just paying to get COVID, and maybe not really getting the full experience of the third year, because of COVID, like because of lower case loads and, different patient cases, things like that.
Yeah.
Are you wearing N95s, or like how? Like, what's the?
They just have us wearing normal surgical masks.
Okay.
So yeah, it's interesting for sure. But I'm getting the vaccine on Wednesday, which is pretty cool. So they're prioritizing med students. Which is nice to see. Yeah. Kind of mitigate some of those concerns.
Yeah. I think this should have been the first year they've actually paid you guys. This is a very interesting time.
I know it's weird because as a med student, we're like not essential to the team, right? Like to the healthcare team. We don't, we basically just do whatever they tell us to do. Yeah. We're there to learn, but like our presence there is not game changing. Like, it's not going to change the patient's care that much to have us there.
You might do more than you think.
Yeah, no, I think we definitely do more than we might feel like we're doing. But at the same time, it sometimes feels like we're just sitting there and not doing anything of value. So,
I mean, yeah, I think I agree with Lance on that one. Like, the fact that they're just seeing someone young and learning there, I think that makes a whole lot of difference.
For sure.
That would make me interested as a patient. Personally, as a patient, I would like to see that.
Yeah.
But that even sucks with COVID because we all have to wear masks. So a lot of that face-to-face interaction that can happen between provider and patient is kind of not there because you can't see our facial expressions.
It's the one time in the world where, like, in my life where I was like, yay, I get to dress up as a ninja, but not for the right reasons.
Right.
Like, it's the worst. Like, I even bought like a Sub-Zero mask.
Yeah.
I saw that.
But I'm like, it's just so disappointing now because I'm like, oh, I'm wearing this so I don't die. So great.
Right.
Instead of joining the Lin Kuei tournament. But anyhow, so just real quick, I want to ask some brief questions about COVID. Just to clear the air, because I can't have a med student on here and not ask questions.
Right.
So really quick, what distinguishes a coronavirus from other viruses or the flu? And I know it's a really big question because it's a bit complicated.
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing about coronavirus is that we just don't know enough about it. Because it sort of came out of nowhere in the sense that nobody really had time to get significant research to understand it or what it can do. And we don't know about its long-term effects, right? A lot of viruses and a lot of other pathogens can have long-term effects that can occur years down the line. Like measles, for example. Like, there's this complication of measles. If you get measles as a kid, you recover. And then 10, 15, 20 years later, you have no symptoms for all that time. But decades later, you can get something called subacute sclerosing panencephalitis, which is basically like it reactivates in your brain and like just fucks shit up.
Oh
and,
gosh.
It's brutal.
I heard like shingles does something similar.
Shingles you can have like post-herpetic neuralgia, which is like pain caused by the virus that's like kind of laying dormant in your nerves.
Thank you for explaining, because I was lost.
Yeah. Okay. But so that's one of the things that kind of has freaked me out personally about this virus is that we just don't know, and we don't know what it could cause. Like, if I get it now, am I going to have some kind of crazy complication 30 years from now?
For me as a layperson, it's like it's such an invisible enemy that you can't see. I mean, sure, we can see it with microscopes and everything, but I'm talking about just your day-to-day life. Like, it's such an invisible enemy that you don't know. You don't know if you're doing the right things or the wrong things.
Exactly. So, I don't think anything about it in particular is like super special or crazy that makes it a pandemic. It's just more that we don't know anything about it, and
we're doing our best.
We're doing our best to kind of come up with ways to mitigate it. It's brand new, basically. So
yeah.
Nothing we have works super well.
Okay. So in terms of COVID, what was blown out of proportion and what wasn't?
I mean, I feel like in the beginning, by the government especially, they didn't really do a good job in being clear about like what is going on, like what this is, and how much of an impact it could have. So I think it was pretty grossly mismanaged at the beginning, unfortunately, because I think a lot of what we're going through now could have been mitigated had it been taken care of earlier on. And maybe we could have gone back to normal sooner. Obviously, we're not back to normal yet.
No.
Florida is.
Right.
Florida's partying.
But it's just crazy because the amount of people that have died from this, and I feel like, I don't want to get political, but I feel like
Go for it.
Yeah,
Dive in.
maybe some of the conservatives and the administration kind of has downplayed it all the way through. Like, oh, this is nothing. It's just like the flu. Like, the fatality rate is super low, which like.
Is it somewhere in the millions? 1 million, I think.
Worldwide, I'm not totally sure, but I think like 400,000 Americans have died.
Keep in perspective, 9/11, roughly 3,000.
Right.
So this is a lot more 9/11s.
Exactly. I feel like people just don't really understand, or we're not given the resources to understand that this is like a serious problem.
Communication has definitely been an issue.
Communication has been a huge issue, in my opinion.
So that being said, you do trust the information that's come from the CDC. And I'm not saying that because I don't trust the CDC, but there has been a lot of frustration lately in the news with the CDC. Like, where do you get a lot of your news from?
Yeah, I think for like healthcare related news, for me, I have to read like scientific journals and things like that. But that's not something that I feel like a layperson can really do. Mm-hmm. It's not accessible. The language is not accessible.
And that means that they're stupid. It just means that they don't understand.
Yeah, if you don't have the education, you can't read that stuff. And even for people who have gotten the education, it's tough to read that kind of stuff. So I would say, like, anything from the CDC is trustworthy. Any of these .gov websites are vetted and usually pretty good.
Where did the misinformation about the mask come from originally? Like, I remember, them saying, wear a mask, and then there was like, don't wear a mask, and then it was like back to wearing masks.
I think I kind of remember what you're talking about. That was like in March, right? March.
Yeah.
April. Yeah. I think science is interesting because you're basically trying to answer brand new questions that have no pre-existing kind of framework for them. So with this new virus, it's like, okay, what do we do to mitigate the spread, right? So I don't know too much about that situation, but what I do know is that I'm sure they were trying to figure out, like, okay, are masks going to do a good job of preventing spread?
Right.
And then they had some data that showed, oh, maybe it's not. Maybe like it's actually making things worse. But then as time went on, they were able to say, okay, actually, this is the way to go. It's going to keep us safe and prevent this from spreading throughout the whole population.
Or something to slow it down at least.
Yeah. So, and I think a lot of people don't really understand that aspect of science. And that's just, it boils down to a lack of good communication, I think, between like the scientific community and the general population.
Yeah. A lack of teachers, lack of appreciation for teachers, like across the board.
Yeah, it's been really weird. I think especially with the advent of like social media and Google, people inherently trust themselves more than they trust other people. That is just an aspect of being human.
100% agree.
It's the self versus the others, right? But unfortunately, when it comes to issues like this with science, most people should not be trusting themselves because they haven't learned. They don't have the education, right? Like, that's not a knock on them. They're certainly probably smart enough to get that education, but you have a lot of people trying to make healthcare decisions and have informed opinions based on like Google searches and like reading message boards and things like that.
I think memes are informing. Informing the public, because on our previous episode we talked about like how I remember not when it first kicked off, but like black people were like, black people can't catch it, like based off the memes and everything. But then like come to find out, the black communities are like some of the worst being hit with the coronavirus, and like we didn't believe it until. What was it? Idris Elba had caught it.
He was watching Naruto to get over it.
Yeah.
So,
And a couple basketball players, and then all of a sudden, oh shit, okay, yeah, now it's real.
Yeah, it's actually pretty incredible, and not in a bad way, in my opinion, because it's so mind blowing. Like, as a scientist, someone who's like in the scientific community and is going to be a healthcare provider very shortly, just to see that maybe people don't really trust the things that come out of our mouths, right? And they're getting their own information from unreliable sources. But you can't really blame them, because I don't think the scientific community has done a good job of establishing grounds of communication between themselves and the general public. because you need to be able to communicate these ideas in ways that anyone will understand and anyone will want to understand. And as complex as these ideas are, it is tough to do that, right?
It's hard.
It's hard, but like I feel like there needs to be more kind of effort put into that, because otherwise people are not gonna kind of reach out to the science community.
There's a dermatologist I sent you on Instagram,
right?
And she's just, quite frankly, she's beautiful Lebanese doctor.
Shout out Lebanese.
She's an incredibly intelligent doctor who, through Instagram, is breaking down every question in terms of what people have for whatever skin conditions, like hyperpigmentation, what to do to use for like cosmetic surgery for inserts or scapular changes and stuff like that. And what's cool is that she's like, well, if you want to look at this research, she can sometimes actually give your own research. And it's one aspect, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is doing a great job of using social media to bridge gaps and be like, hey, this is what we can do. This is what our response is. I'll put the links up on my site. We can go from here and there. I don't know if that's the only way to do it, but that's definitely something that's better than nothing.
I agree. And I think the more and more people do that, the better. And it's certainly something that I would like to try and do in my career. It's tough though, because social media is
annoying.
It's annoying. Yeah. It's tough to kind of
destroy
deal with
our brains in some ways.
Yeah. And I don't like social media. I don't like to post things about my life constantly to game the algorithm, right? Yeah. To like make your posts be seen, to like engage your audiences.
I like sharing videos, but like that's about it.
And people only click on certain things. Like you have to have everything right for them to click on it, right? And it's tough. And especially for someone like me who's maybe not the most outgoing. Like I'm outgoing with people that I meet in person. Right. But like I don't like being online, like faceless with interacting with all these faceless people.
Yeah. Keyboard warring it up.
Yeah.
Right. And like posting all these intimate details of my life, that's tough. So I think it's something that individuals in the scientific community kind of have to get used to doing that a little bit more and stepping out of our comfort zones, even if we're used to sitting in a lab or at a desk all day.
Yeah, I mean, there's people that talks to the company. There's people that talks to the lab guys. Like, you need an intermediary that is a good interpreter for both people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's something that's undervalued and underappreciated. So definitely, this is a very, very frustrating time for all of us. And you and I have talked about. We've been actually one of the things that we really bonded over. If you don't mind me saying this, is because we bonded over mental health issues.
For sure.
Definitely anxiety. Our cases were depression. And so what are you doing during this pandemic to stay sane? Because you're a med student, you're a human being, you're my friend. How are you doing now? How are you handling all of this, man?
Honestly, for me, it's just been like a lot of video games and movies and TV shows. And, it's been tough for sure. Like I haven't felt like myself like for months. You know what I mean?
Same here.
And
it's really weird, right?
Yeah, it's weird. And I don't know if I know I mentioned to Kunal before, just to kind of shed a little bit more light on kind of how the situation has been from my perspective as like a medical student. So at the end of our first 2 years of med school, you basically have to take this big licensing exam. It's called Step 1. And this test is built up throughout the first 2 years. Like every single person you meet is stressing the importance of this test because the way the score you get on it basically opens or closes certain doors in terms of what specialty you want to go into. So of course, every second year med student and first year med student is stressing about this test over and over again, just nonstop. So you usually take it in the spring, and my class had been gearing up for this for the past 2 years, working up to it. And right when the pandemic hit was when we were supposed to all take it. So like my entire class pretty much was getting delayed for months for this very important test that's emotionally, mentally, physically taxing to study for and just like prepare for, because there's so much information, For my case, like the testing center shut down from the pandemic like the day before I was going to take the test. So I was done studying, like I was ready to go. And just to have something like that where the importance was so huge, and it was like the past 2 years building up to this moment where it's especially important because I want to go into a competitive specialty in dermatology. So the score really, really matters. So that was like very stressful for me. So ever since that day, I still remember waking up and seeing the email that the thing was canceled. I have not felt like good, you know? Like my mind is just all over the place. Like my mood is weird. I'm not thinking as quickly as I usually, or I used to. Not learning as quickly as I used to. Not able to focus properly.
Foggy.
It's been really, really strange. And for us, since we had to jump right into clinical rotations, basically, as soon as we took this big test, we didn't have any time in between because of the pandemic. And we had to immediately go back and go into the hospital and adjust to this whole new schooling system, this new setting. So for me, and I can't speak for other students, but I'm sure a lot of students feel similarly. But for me, it's been really tough for sure, because I don't feel like I've really had a moment without any of these stressors to kind of process the pandemic, to process everything that we've dealt with this year, because we've had all this other stuff that I've had to worry about. You know, so I think that's been weighing on me a lot this past year, and I hope I can have some time to like really sit down and process everything that's happened this year, because I think I desperately need it mentally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for saying all that. That was real vulnerable. Thank you.
No, of course, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very true. Like there hasn't been a break. Like and plus we're in the winter months now, and so things I'm sure are even more foggy for you ever since then. Just so I'm clear, when they said the delay in the test on March, when were you able to take it eventually?
Yeah, so I took it like near the end of May.
Okay,
so that's considerable.
Oh my God, yeah. Well, it's hard to really explain the impact of that if you haven't been through it, because it's hard to understand as like someone who's not been in med school how much information there is on this test and how like important this test is. It's like you peak. You have a very narrow window at which you're at your best, and you have to basically time the usage of your resources and like practice question banks and practice tests so that you use them all at the right time so that you can peak on that same day that you take your test, right?
Yeah.
But for me, like I used everything up. I was ready because like the next day, that was it.
Yeah.
So I didn't have any resources left. So, I was like so demoralized. I didn't study for like a month and a half.
Yeah.
And I just like played video games because that was like the only thing that was going to bring me any semblance of like happiness.
Like,
you know what I mean?
What's the point after a while?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially because the testing centers didn't do a good job of communicating with us about when they would open. They would like say one day and then they would say, nope, we're not opening. Then they would do it. They would keep doing that. Okay. So like we had no idea when the test would even be for us. So when you don't have a date and you don't know if it's going to be in 2 weeks or in 3 months, it's hard to like study and give the same effort. I know some people who did, and kudos to them.
Yeah.
I am not, my mental health is not capable of that, especially after getting canceled the day before. So like I was just sitting there playing video games, like stressing out, like, oh, I need to study, but I don't want to study, like, because I don't even know when I'm going to take it.
It's like you go through all that Rocky IV training,
gosh.
and then Drago's like, you know what? We will fight next year, and I'm like, what? But dude, I cut calories for all this stuff.
Exactly. That's exactly how it was. It was like, you know that there's a finish line in sight, so you dump every ounce of your being,
blood, sweat, and tears,
into like making sure you secure like the best possible result in this situation. And then when that's like kind of ripped away at the last second unexpectedly, and then you don't know when it's coming back, that's the tough part for sure.
Wow. I want to ask you this one question and circle back to what we're talking about now. What made you want to be a doctor, and when did you know you want to be a doctor?
Well, so my dad's a doctor. Shout out to him.
He's a nice guy.
Yeah, no, I love him to death. I learned a lot from him, but like he and I didn't really get along growing up, not as much as either of us I think would have liked. And this happens a lot in Indian families. Like it's a thing.
We have worked through a lot of it. We are much closer, but right. I understand. I love my parents, by the way.
Yeah, I love my parents as well. And growing up, my parents are from India, so they're immigrants, and all they knew was what they were taught in their country.
So this is one generation right after independence. So everything that you can make money with are the sciences.
Right. So
and accounting.
When they came here, all they knew about America was what they were seeing on TV,
McDonald's.
Right.
Making time.
So, I can't even imagine what it's like, to come to a brand new country. You don't know anyone. You have nothing. You're having to face all this racism and all of these obstacles to success. And you have a kid, right? And you're trying to figure out, like, how do I raise this kid in this country, but also with what I know to be true, like what my values are. From my country, like I want my child to know all of these things, right? And I'm sure that's what was going through their heads. And I think for my dad, especially, being so fresh out of like his whole life in India, he hadn't really adjusted to maybe or he hadn't learned the American kind of morals or values and how the schooling system is and stuff.
Very different.
And it's very different, of course. So there was a lot of pressure, I think, to like do well in sciences and math, and that's like a very Indian thing. And I think I resented that growing up. So like I didn't, I never worked hard growing up. Like I was so lazy. I skated by on intelligence. That's
Really?
all it was. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I basically put in the bare minimum. I was did very average on tests and everything because I didn't work hard.
I mean, it's complete opposite of how I know you now. So that's why.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's I think part of me growing up, I was just like rebelling against what my dad wanted me to do. So he was a doctor. I didn't really want to be a doctor back then. I was like, I want to do like the opposite because he wants me to do really well in science and math. Like, no, I don't want to do science and math. I'm going to do music or something.
Yeah.
Because I love to sing and that's like my passion.
Guy has golden pipes. I heard some of his videos. Check him out.
But I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't really decide on medicine until like I went through all this stuff in undergrad, and then I kind of had to like do some soul searching and find myself, figure out what I was actually passionate about, separate from like my family pressures. And that's kind of when I realized that's what I want to do,
Yeah. I'm closer in that journey than I was before, but I'm still definitely around that journey. So
Yeah.
I understand that.
It was definitely like a winding road because like for me, like it was crazy.
So did you start off in college as a music major or?
Oh man, yeah. So it's a longish story. I'll try and like boil it down to the bullet points. I think I've always struggled with like mental health stuff. I think like what Kunal mentioned, we've kind of bonded over that.
Definitely.
I think that I was always anxious and had depression like for most of my childhood, but it just didn't really go diagnosed. Because again, in Indian culture, mental health is not like a thing.
It's considered a white person problem.
Yeah, it's if you're not able to focus, you're not able to do something, you're stupid or lazy. Again, that also goes back to what I was saying about how my parents were kind of in their Indian morals because that's all they knew. So for me, any difficulties I had growing up, it was just laziness.
Be a man about it. You'll be fine.
So high school came and went. I've dealt with some some crazy stuff in high school. It's neither here nor there. I'm not going to get into it. But basically, when I was ready to go to college, so I graduated from high school in 2012. When I was ready to go to college, I was like at my lowest point, I guess, mentally. So I was like very depressed. I was like, oh my God, like I don't know what I want. So I get to school, first time I'm away from home, and I'm just drinking all the time. Like I'm drinking to like forget the pain or whatever it is, whatever I'm feeling or not feeling. Like, very turbulent time. Like I was never able to fall asleep until like 7 a.m. So I would miss all my classes every day. I'd miss tests and it would just restart. I would like fall asleep at 7 a.m., wake up at 5 p.m. and then be awake, go eat dinner, socialize, maybe drink. And that was it. And like, I was not sure what I want to do. I was like, oh, I'm pre-law or, oh, I'll study music. I'm not sure. But, I took like all these random classes. And of course I didn't do well. Like, how can you do well? I was missing tests. I was failing left and right. And that went on for like 3 semesters. The only thing that kind of helped me stay alive, basically, was my a cappella group. So I was like in an a cappella group there. Like I mentioned, singing is my big thing. So that was the only thing that was making me somewhat happy. So I was doing that, but that was it. Eventually, I think the December of 2013, that was like my 3rd semester in school, I get a letter, or an email actually, and it's like, oh, you have a GPA of like 1.2. So we're going to have to kick you out. And you can reapply in a year if you want. Otherwise, best of luck. We wish you the best. I hope you can get like the help you need, whatever. And this was around the time I met my girlfriend, Katie. It's a kind of a funny story looking back. We met in like October, and December was when we kind of like really got together. So I was going to go visit her over Christmas break. We had kind of like made things official as two like 18-year-olds can be, right? And
Katie's a peach, by the way. She's awesome.
No, yeah, she's the best. I was going to go meet her in her hometown over Christmas break and like meet her family and stuff like that for the first time. And I landed in the airport in Connecticut, and I turned my phone on. That's the moment I got that email where it's telling me that I'm getting kicked out of school.
Yeah.
So I'm like, holy fucking shit. Like, what do I do? Like, I'm about to see this girl that I have not known for that long at all. And I'm about to meet her family for the first time. And wow, okay. Like, this is not good news to be receiving at this moment. But like, the crazy thing is, I was in such a bad place mentally at that time in my life that I barely even cared. Like, I was only worried about telling my parents. Like, that's how I was like so out of it. It was just, I was so depressed, so anxious. I was like, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm about to see this girlfriend and I'm going to be happy. So yeah, I actually appealed the decision too. And they were like, no, it's not happening. But in hindsight, it was the best thing that could have happened for me. Because I had to like pick myself up and figure things out on my own. Because when I told my parents, my dad was like cutting me off. He was like, you're cut off now. You got to get a job and figure this out. Because they didn't know about it. They were in the dark about all this. So finding out about that, after 3 semesters was brutal. And, I tried to explain, like, I was really depressed and the mental health was in the trash can and stuff. And that's why things happened the way they did. And then we kind of hung up the call and separated. And I think my parents had to kind of deal with that on their own and research it a little bit more and try to understand what had happened. And I was on my own for like the first time in my life. I had never worked a job before. I was 19 because my parents were always about like academics. So it's like, I don't want you to get a job because it'll deter from your school.
Right.
So I desperately tried to find a job, had to find a place to live like very quickly because I was getting kicked out of the dorm rooms. So I was like staying on people's couches for a month, and I stayed with Katie in her dorm room and her roommate with communal bathrooms and communal laundry. Like it was crazy. So I had to figure all this out like on the fly. And Katie was there for me at every step of the way, which is crazy because we had basically just met. So the fact that she was like so supportive is insane to me. And like, I'm very thankful for that, obviously.
I already liked Katie, but this is awesome.
Yeah. So I had to get a job. I found a job in sales. I was like selling DirecTV. And I found an apartment. I finally moved in. And then it was just kind of like figuring out what it was like to be an adult and like live in the world alone and not know what to do and like pay bills and things like that. Like, I didn't know about any of this stuff. I had to kind of figure it out on the fly. So I worked. I went to therapy because I wanted to figure out what was going on, get myself to a better place. And finally, like after maybe like 6 months or so, I'm starting to feel pretty good. I'm like, okay, I want to go back to school. I feel like I want to go into medicine because I feel like that's what I'm passionate about, but I'm not sure yet. Or maybe I should just stick it out with the sales jobs because I'm making decent enough money. So maybe it's not worth going back. And then one day I went to the office, and every day before we went to the stores to sell to customers. It was a terrible job. I hated it so much. Excuse me. Brutal. Because you're just annoying. You're like standing in the aisles. You're like that annoying guy. Like, hey, have you heard about our DirecTV deal today? Brutal. Anyway, before we went to do that, every day, the boss would come in and give like a motivational pep talk or something. And one day he comes in and he's like, all right, guys, let's get ready to go to the stores. We're saving lives here. We gotta go and take care of this. We're saving lives, saving the day, living the dream. And I was like,
with TV? Like,
bro, we're selling DirecTV. Like, how are we saving lives? That was the moment when I was like, okay, this is not for me. Like, I need to figure out what I want to do. And I settled on medicine at that point because I was like, this is what I've always been good at, and it's what I'm interested in. And, I'm ready to kind of give it my all now that I'm in a good place mentally. Wow. Because I was finally like somewhat stable and happy and not wanting to kill myself every other day. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm glad you did that. I'm glad you did that.
Yeah. So then I finally went back to school and, it was only up from there. But Katie and I both transferred to Lafayette College in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
That's kind of where we finished our degrees.
Okay.
I always wondered how that happened.
Yeah, because she didn't like it at our original school either. And so we both applied for transfer and ended up getting into the same school. All of this being said, this very long-winded story, right? All of this being said, it made it very, very difficult to get into med school because medical school is incredibly competitive.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is where I wanted to circle back to, like, what is it like with mental health being in as a med student?
Yeah, I think there's a huge stigma about it. Like, I know people who hide aspects of their mental health, like depression, anxiety, things like that, on their application because sometimes it's just a red flag to admissions committees. They're like, oh, this person has depression, like it's going to be a bad doctor. Can't get him in.
Really?
Yeah.
That's nuts.
So,
I had no idea about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's getting better now, but there has historically been a huge stigma about it. And unfortunately, I didn't have the luxury of hiding. I couldn't hide the issue, unlike other people, because I had a 1.2 GPA initially. That was on my transcript. I had to explain it somehow. Otherwise, like, there was no recourse, right? Like, there's no way. So, I had to, like, really be open in my essays and write a really good essay and have it read by a bunch of different people to kind of make sure that I'm getting the point across. But even that aside, like, I knew that if I wanted to have a chance, I had to be, like, fucking perfect for the rest of the road. Like, 4.0.
Yeah.
Like, almost as well as I could possibly do on the MCAT, like the admissions test for medical school. Like, all of these things are huge parts of the application, but for me they were doubly, triply, quadruply important because I had to show that I was capable and I was, like, ready to go, ready to be in med school, because that 1.2 and that depression, that everything was on the transcript, right?
Right.
And it was not easy because I had to get a lot of intrinsic motivation because a lot of people did not believe in me, right? Because I mentioned earlier that I was always pretty average growing up because I didn't try very hard. I was never like this exceptional student who was getting, like, all the awards at the award days and all that stuff like that. I didn't care. I didn't put the effort in. It is what it is. So everyone kind of thought that was just me,
Gotcha.
But the reality was, like, my whole life I was both lazy and depressed, and I didn't know what was going on in my head. I just knew that this is my mind, this is what I can do, this is what I'm going to do with it, and I don't want to be studying right now. I want to be doing something that makes me happy. Like, that's all I knew when I was growing up.
And that's the thing that comes after you go through therapy. It's very hard for, like, it's easy enough for you to be like, okay, I am this new person now. I've changed, I've worked on myself, done all these things. But everyone around you still sees you as that person.
Right.
And that has been the hardest thing for me in certain parts of my family, certain parts of my friends. They still see me as that person. And it's been a lot of work, a lot of conversations, a lot of tough conversations, and be like, hey, I'm not 18 years old anymore. That kid was 10 years ago. And I totally understand what you're going through.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not so much anymore because I'm now in medical school. I'm in a new phase in my life where the majority of people I know they've only known this guy. They didn't know the other guy that I was.
That there was this whole other portion to you. Yeah.
Completely different, like completely separate.
Yeah. And,
especially getting prepared to kind of apply for medical school or make that journey. People were like, oh, you're probably looking into something else. Like, you're probably not going to get into med school. It's probably not going to work out. With that on your GPA, with that 1.2 that's on your transcript, like, it's almost impossible. So I remember when I transferred to Lafayette in Pennsylvania, I met with the health career advisor healthcare career advisor. It's like somebody who's an advisor for people who want to go into med school or nursing school or whatever.
Gotcha.
And basically tell them what to plan and what courses to take, what to do. And I explained my situation. I was like, okay, so here's the deal. This is what happened. I want to go to med school. That's going to happen one way or another. My plan is I'm going to get a 4.0 here, and I'm going to do this well on the MCAT, and I think that'll be enough. And she's like, I mean, that's not going to happen. Like, what? You need to think of a different career spot, like a career opportunity or different field. You know, it's not going to work. I proved her wrong, but like just being there as this fresh face and kind of apprehensive about, can I do this? Like, do I believe what everyone is saying, or do I believe in myself? Right. So those are the kind of things that I kind of had to deal with going through this whole process. Yeah, it's been a winding road for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm kind of speechless. That was a lot, and in a great way, in a beautiful way. I want that to be apparent.
What made you choose your specialty?
Honestly, it's the only thing that I've ever like really enjoyed in shadowing and things like that. What I like about dermatology is that you can see everything that's happening for the most part.
Okay.
You know, if someone has a lesion that you need to take a look at and fix, it's right there.
Yeah.
You know, whereas in other medical specialties, you kind of have to rely on a lot of imaging, like CT scans, MRIs, ultrasounds, all that stuff. And then you have to wait for that to get read by an expert, and it's just like it's a lot of waiting around to be able to see what's going on inside, right?
Yeah, it isn't as sexy as, you know, Grey's Anatomy makes it.
No, medicine is nothing like Grey's Anatomy. No.
You were the first to tell me that from the medical field.
Really?
Yeah, I have a cousin who's a nurse, and she loves Grey's Anatomy. I don't know if she says it's accurate or not, but she definitely loves it.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I sometimes get enjoyment out of watching some of these shows, but it's not accurate at all.
Okay. Not accurate. Okay. What's like the biggest thing you've seen that you're just like, no, they need to stop like showing these images, or they need to stop portraying medical field like that?
Oh man,
because there's like 100 doctor shows now.
Yeah, it's like oh my god, there's so many things. I feel like things in these medical shows happen a lot faster than they actually do.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, it feels like these doctors in the shows are just running around all the time. They're not doing anything else except like talking to patients or having dramatic conversations with each other. And it's like, no, you have to like go to the computer, order tests, like order blood count, order imaging for your patients. You have to wait for the orders to go through. You have to wait for whoever got the order to carry out the procedure or do whatever you ask them to do.
There's a lot of red tape.
You have to wait for the results to get uploaded into the medical software. You also have to write documentation on all of your patients, like progress notes or history physical notes. And that takes a long time. In medicine, a very small amount of time is spent with the patient. Most of the time is spent at the computer, like writing notes and putting in orders and doing all that stuff. So in the shows, you don't see any of that.
Yeah.
It's just high paced all the time. Yeah. It's like with the patients 24/7. Not how it is at all. You know, there's a lot of sitting around.
It's a far less sexy picture of what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay. So now that you're in the thick of it, you're almost done with your first, I guess, leg of med school, because there's residency that comes after this.
Yeah.
Technically, right?
Right.
What's it been in the past 3 years in terms of mental health, in talking to other students? Like how, like, I mean, you kind of already answered this, but like, what's it like in that way? Because you've talked about in terms of the application, but what's it like when you're in the thick of everything?
I mean, I think it's obviously very dependent on the person. What I can say is that I know a lot of people in my class, for example, who like have mental health issues and are dealing with those every day that, you know, they wouldn't talk about openly because it's like there's that stigma attached to it. So, you know, it's prevalent, and I don't think it's a problem. Like it makes people better to kind of work through issues and persevere and learn how to relate to different issues. That helps. Human. Yeah, it helps us kind of relate to patients better too. I think for me, it was not super difficult to kind of manage the mental health initially. I mean, it was, of course, it's never easy. I'm just saying, like, it was pretty smooth. I think when the pandemic hit, that's when things got rough for me.
Yeah.
I don't know about everyone else. I'm sure everyone else feels the same way. But yeah.
That's pretty much all the questions I had. Vince, you got anything?
I think you covered a lot of things. I mean, where do you see yourself personally, in the future, like after residency, after school?
Yeah. I want to open up my own private practice.
Okay.
So it's owning a business pretty much. So I want to kind of manage everything on my own and build a business and run it the way I want to run it.
Yeah.
Not have to deal with, other red tape and things like that.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I see myself. And I hope to like venture into the education portion a little bit, like we talked about earlier with the communication and communicating all these issues and diseases and treatments to the general public in ways that are easily understandable and accessible.
Being a bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then also like I want to work with undergraduate students and medical students just to kind of share my experience and my story, because I think it's important to understand that no matter what you go through, like you can still kind of achieve what you want to achieve.
Yeah.
Even if people are telling you otherwise.
Absolutely.
The storyteller is kind of something lost. I think it needs to be brought back, and especially in the science field, because in the humanities, like everyone gives presentations all the time. It's not a big deal.
Right. And in the medical field, we give lots of presentations. It's just to other scientists.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm kind of speechless because you had these beautiful, vulnerable stories of how you went through everything. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about it.
Yeah, I didn't know
absolutely.
80% of it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be that guy who like talks, you don't want to be that
No.
guy who talks about that stuff all the time.
Right.
And I don't want it to be like defining who I am,
Mhm.
because I felt like it did define who I was before I was in med school,
Right.
because that was what was driving me. It was, I have to be perfect because of this.
Yeah, you have to prove them wrong.
Yeah, exactly. I had that chip on my shoulder.
Yeah.
And now that I'm in med school, I wanted to kind of keep it under wraps, but then I realized like I get to choose like what defines me, right? Like that's always going to be a huge part of who I am, especially because I still struggle with those issues. But that was part of my journey, and it's important to like lean into it and recognize that that was important for me to go through, and that's part of, or a huge reason of why I am the person I am today.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've talked about it before on like Facebook when I first got into med school, because I felt like that was a big milestone, but I haven't really talked about it too much since. So I appreciate the opportunity to kind of like tell you guys about it, and hopefully other people listen to it and get something from it.
Yeah.
I would love that.
Yeah.
I feel like more people are going through it, but, are afraid to say something about it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, they're gonna think I'm weak. They're gonna think I'm crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Like, no, everybody's been having it. They're like literally everyone's campaign slogan for everything this entire year has been like, it's been a terrible year.
Yeah.
Like, one of the oddest things for me in this entire pandemic, it was like, oh, everyone knows how I feel on a daily basis now. Now, granted, it's taken to an 11th degree, but I'm like, now more and more people are like, oh my gosh, I feel alone, isolated, anxious all the time. And these are people that don't necessarily have quote unquote problems with mental health.
Right.
And now it's like, yeah, welcome to my world, kid. It's fun. And then they just put on the face mask and you go outside.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been an odd, it's a very, very odd time. Well, let's chill. Thank you so much for coming, man.
Yeah,
Thanks for
thank
having me.
you.
That's like too heavy.
No, that blew me
No,
away.
that was great.
Okay.
That, that's some fucking
That's how-
5-star quality right there. No, like this is perfect.
Definitely appreciate it.
This is beautiful. This has been fucking grand slam for me. Blew me away.
Me too.
Good. I'm glad.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming.
Hey fan peeps, thanks for joining, and as always, we appreciate any feedback. You can follow us on our Facebook page, They Need a Hobby, and also at TNAH Pod on Instagram and Twitter.
Hopefully one day we'll find a hobby and maybe even be one of the cool kids. Peace. We always go with the idea of talk drunk and edit sober. So you talk as much as you want, man.
Nice.